Okay, the couch stretch, arguably one of the most popular stretches for the quads, specifically the rectus femoris muscle, which is a two-joint hip flexor, meaning it crosses both the knee and the hip. So it helps flex the hip and it helps extend the knee. So to stretch it, we need to fully flex the knee and keep hip extension. Now, the couch stretch is a very accessible stretch. This is how it got its name. It can literally be done on the couch. But there are a few problems with it within the context of progressive overload. So I find if you're very stiff in the quads and you're trying to do this stretch at first, it can be very difficult for you to get upright in this position. And you don't have a ton of leverage to extend the hip because now the lumbar spine muscles are working against gravity to kind of extend through the spine to get yourself upright. Maybe if you were holding a stick or something. Now, that's problem number one. The next issue I see with this is if we're actually trying to develop some strength at end range of motion in the quads itself, the loading profile for the quads in this position isn't very good because all we can really do here is just drive isometrically, pushing the foot against the bench here or the wall if we're doing it on the wall. We don't actually have a vector of loading against gravity to create some external resistance in the quads at end range. So a really easy fix we can do is just scoot the knee forward a bit. And you might think this is a regressed version of the stretch, but now what we can actually do is instead of just trying to lean our torso back toward the wall, we try to lean our torso and our butt back toward the heel. Okay, so we can turn this into somewhat of a reverse Nordic curl, making sure we keep that ab engagement, that posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, we can even extend this leg for a little bit of counterbalance. Okay, another way we could progress this is elevating the front foot to further facilitate a posterior pelvic tilt, since hip flexion on this leg will help drag the pelvis underneath. Now, what's happening here is the vector of loading is moving through knee extension. We're eccentrically strengthening those quads at end range, which will allow us to overload this stretch. Now we can even hold a weight here in this front rack position. And again, this will help us build some capacity through the quads at end range as if we're doing a mix between a couch stretch and a reverse Nordic curl on one leg. Now, I do really like the upright torso variation of the couch stretch for loading hip extension. So in this position, you start with an upright torso and extend the hip forward and really squeeze the glutes. So yes, we're still stretching the rectus femoris, but the vector of loading is now moving through hip extension. And especially if we can elevate this back leg or even scoot the knee out a little bit more, we can get more hip extension. So now you can see gravity is acting down through the hip through hip extension. If we do kind of dynamically move back and forth here, if we're holding weight, we can then strengthen more of the proximal portion of the rectus femoris and the psoas through hip flexion. Okay, so these are just two different intentions. The vector of loading here is through eccentric knee extension, whereas here is going to be through hip flexion. You can even combine the two intentions within the same set. So maybe I do some reps, loading eccentric knee extension, driving through the foot into the bench, and then after that, I can immediately keep the knee in the same position and thrust the hip forward as we load hip flexion eccentrically and stretch more of the proximal portion of the rectum. Don't just waste your time with this stretch. Again, it's good for getting used to this quad stretch, spending some time here. But after that, there's not much ways we can progressively overload this. And if you find that you've been doing the couch stretch for forever and it's not getting any easier, then you need to spice it up. Scoot the knee forward and lean back.